The stars bent and twisted as massive ships tore through space itself. One by one, the vessels of the Velcrin Empire emerged from the darkness, their hulls gleaming with alien metal that had seen 1,000 conquered worlds. Commander Thelvax stood on the bridge of his flagship, his 4 eyes focused on the small blue planet that hung in the distance like a jewel waiting to be claimed. "Another primitive world," he said to his second officer. "Intelligence reports they haven't even left their own planet yet. Still using chemical rockets like children playing with fireworks." The officer nodded, his scaled skin reflecting the dim lights of the command center. 47 worlds have fallen before us, Commander. This will be 48. Earth grew larger on their screens as the fleet moved closer. Thelvax had fought across half the galaxy. He had seen species that could breathe fire and others that lived in frozen methane seas. None of them had stopped the Velcrin Empire. This planet, with its weak radio signals and fractured governments, would be the easiest conquest yet. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, alarm screamed through concrete tunnels that went miles into the earth. Admiral Taeyang ran through the corridor, his gray hair wild and his uniform half-buttoned. He had waited 20 years for this moment. 20 years of being called crazy. 20 years of politicians laughing at his warnings. "Sir, the signatures match exactly what you predicted," a young lieutenant said, her fingers flying across holographic displays. 37 capital ships, over 200 support vessels. They're holding position at the edge of our solar system. Taeyang's jaw tightened. He was 56 years old and had spent half his life preparing for this day. While other nations built schools and parks, he had begged for weapons. While diplomats talked about peace, he had listened to the whispers from the stars. "Activate Protocol Endgame," he said quietly. "Contact every military base on and off the planet. Tell them this is not a drill." Across the world, phones rang in the middle of the night. Presidents and prime ministers woke to the words they had hoped never to hear. "They're here." In Switzerland, Dr. Bora stared at the data streaming across her computer screens. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her team at CERN had detected the alien ships the moment they appeared, and she had been running calculations ever since. "Will it work?" her assistant asked, looking at the weapon schematics that covered the wall. Bora pushed her glasses up her nose. She was 42 years old and had spent the last 15 years building weapons based on alien technology they had intercepted from deep space. Weapons that politicians said were too expensive. Weapons that generals said were impossible. "It has to work," she said. "We don't get a second chance." The broadcast came 72 hours after the Velcrin fleet arrived. Every television, every radio, every phone on Earth received the same message. The translation was rough, processed through computers that had never heard this language before, but the meaning was clear. "People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Velcrin Empire. Surrender your weapons and leaders within 72 hours. Resist and your cities will burn from orbit. Comply and you will be allowed to live as servants to the Empire. You have been warned." In Seoul, people flooded the streets in panic. In New York, markets crashed. In Moscow, military jets scrambled into the sky. The world had 3 days to decide, fight or surrender. Many wanted to give up immediately. What chance did Earth have against ships that could cross the galaxy? What hope did humanity have against an empire that had conquered dozens of worlds? But Admiral Taeyang had a different answer. He stood before the United Nations Security Council, his voice steady even as his hands shook. "For 20 years I've been preparing for this," he said. "We've built weapons in secret. We've trained soldiers for battles in space. We've hidden bases on the Moon and Mars. While the Velcrin think we're primitives playing with rockets, we've been building a defense system that can turn their ships into scrap metal." "You're asking us to fight a war we cannot win," the Chinese ambassador said. "I'm asking you to fight a war we've already prepared for," Taeyang replied. "Surrender means slavery or extinction. At least if we fight as free people." At an airbase in South Korea, Lieutenant Hyun-sik sat in the cockpit of his fighter jet. It looked like a normal aircraft from the outside, but underneath the panels was technology that most people didn't know existed. Quantum engines, energy shields, weapons that could punch holes through starship armor. He was 28 years old and had been training for this mission since he was 18. His instructors said he was reckless. His commanders said he was too aggressive. But his test scores were perfect, and when the time came to choose pilots for humanity's secret spacefighter program, his name was at the top of the list. "Ghost Squadron, this is Command," the radio crackled. "Stand by for launch authorization." Hyun-sik's heart pounded. Around him, 11 other pilots prepared their aircraft. They were the best Earth had to offer. They were also probably going to die. Understood, Command, he replied. Ghost Squadron ready. On the Velkrin flagship, Commander Thelvax watched the countdown timer. 72 hours had seemed generous. Most species surrendered within 24. But the humans had remained silent. Not a single message, not even a plea for mercy. Perhaps they don't understand the situation, his second officer suggested. Then we'll teach them, Thelvax replied. He turned to his weapons officer. Target their largest ocean. Find an area without population centers. We'll show them what our guns can do. The Velkrin fleet moved into Earth's orbit like a dark cloud blocking the sun. People around the world looked up and saw their own extinction hanging in the sky. Some prayed. Some cried. Some simply held their families tight. In the Pacific Ocean, the submarine carrier Incheon sat 200 meters below the surface. Captain Nari watched her instruments carefully. She was 40 years old and had commanded submarines for 20 years. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. Target lock detected, her weapons officer reported. They're aiming at us. Hold position, Nari said calmly. Let them fire first. We need to see what we're dealing with. The Velkrin battleship released a beam of superheated plasma that could melt through a mountain. It struck the ocean surface and drove down through the water like a spear from heaven. On the Velkrin ship, sensors confirmed the hit. Thelvax smiled. The demonstration was complete. Then his sensors showed something impossible. The target was still there, still intact, still broadcasting active signals. How? He whispered. Deep underwater, the Incheon shook as her quantum shields absorbed the attack. Alarms blared, but the hull held firm. Shields at 70%, the engineer reported. We can take 2, maybe 3 more hits like that. Captain Nari smiled coldly. They won't get the chance. Weapons free. Show them what humanity brought to this fight. High above Earth, satellites that had been dormant for years suddenly activated. Tungsten rods, each one weighing several tons, began to drop from orbit. They fell toward the Velkrin fleet, accelerating to speeds that turned them into kinetic weapons more powerful than nuclear bombs. Admiral Tae-yang watched from his command center as the first rod struck home. 3 Velkrin destroyers exploded in balls of fire and debris. Now, he said into his microphone, now we show them what happens when you threaten Earth. Across the planet, weapon systems that had been hidden for decades came to life. The war for humanity's survival had begun. Commander Thelvax stared at his screen in disbelief. 3 of his destroyers were gone. Simply gone, erased from existence by weapons that shouldn't exist on this backward planet. Debris spread across the orbital space like a cloud of metal rain. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted. All ships scatter formation. But the tungsten rods kept falling. They had been placed in orbit years ago, disguised as weather satellites and space debris. Now they revealed their true purpose. Each rod fell with the force of a meteor strike, and there were hundreds of them. A Velkrin cruiser tried to dodge but moved too slowly. The rod punched through its shields like they were made of paper. The ship split in half, atmosphere venting into space along with the bodies of its crew. Another battleship raised its shields to maximum power, and the rod bounced off, but the impact sent the ship spinning out of control. What kind of primitives are these? Thelvax's second officer gasped. The commander didn't answer. He was too busy watching his fleet die. In the sky above South Korea, Lieutenant Hyun-sik pushed his throttle forward and felt the quantum engines roar to life. His fighter jet shot upward, climbing faster than any normal aircraft could manage. Behind him, 11 other pilots from Ghost Squadron followed in perfect formation. Command, this is Ghost Leader, Hyun-sik said into his radio. We're entering the combat zone. Copy that, Ghost Leader, Admiral Tae-yang's voice replied. Enemy fighters are launching from the Velkrin carriers. You are cleared to engage. Hyun-sik's radar lit up with targets. Dozens of alien fighters were pouring out of the larger ships, their engines glowing purple against the black of space. They looked fast. They looked deadly. They looked like they had never lost a fight. Ghost Squadron, break and attack, Hyun-sik ordered. Remember your training. These bastards think we're easy prey. Let's teach them different. The Velkrin pilots had fought across the galaxy. They had destroyed rebel fleets and crushed planetary defenses. They flew in precise formations, following tactical doctrines that had been refined over centuries of warfare. When they saw the primitive human fighters approaching, they felt only contempt. That contempt lasted exactly 7 seconds. Hyunsik didn't follow any doctrine. He twisted his fighter in a spiral that should have been impossible, dodging plasma fire that would have vaporized his ship. Then he fired his missiles, fusion-tipped weapons that moved faster than the Velcrin could track. 2 alien fighters exploded before they even knew they were in danger. "That's for my planet," Hyunsik shouted. The other Ghost Squadron pilots attacked with the same fury. They dove through enemy formations, broke apart enemy targeting locks, and used Earth's atmosphere as a weapon. One pilot lured 3 Velcrin fighters into a dive toward the ocean. The aliens followed, confident they could catch the human. Too late, they realized they were moving too fast to pull up. 3 more fighters turned into burning wreckage that splashed into the Pacific. The Velcrin had never fought an enemy like this. Other species fought with honor and discipline. Humans fought like wild animals, unpredictable and savage. Beneath the ocean, Captain Nari ordered her weapons officer to prepare for Phase 2. The Inshin carried more than just defensive shields. In its launch tubes were missiles that had been designed specifically to kill starships. "Target the closest Velcrin battleship," she commanded. "Fire all tubes." 20 missiles burst from the ocean surface, water streaming off their hulls as they rocketed into space. The Velcrin battleship's point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but human engineers had designed the missiles to be small, fast, and nearly impossible to hit. 18 of the 20 reached their target. The battleship's shields held against the first 3 impacts. The next 5 overloaded the generators. The remaining missiles struck bare hull, and the massive ship tore itself apart from the inside. Commander Thelvax couldn't believe what he was seeing. His fleet, the pride of the Velcrin Empire, was being destroyed by a species that wasn't supposed to have space weapons. How had the intelligence been so wrong? "Order all ships to retreat," he said quietly. "Pull back beyond the moon. We need to regroup." But Admiral Taeyang had anticipated this moment. For 20 years, he had studied every tactic, every strategy, every weakness of the Velcrin military. He knew they would try to retreat when the battle turned against them. He had prepared for exactly this moment. "Dr. Bora," he said into his communicator, "activate the lunar defense grid." In a bunker on the far side of the moon, Dr. Bora's fingers flew across her control panel. Around her, engineers watched massive power generators spin up to full capacity. They had built this facility in secret, hiding it from Earth's own satellites and the prying eyes of alien scouts. "Lunar grid activated," Bora reported, charging particle beam cannons. The moon's surface split open in a dozen places. Massive gun barrels emerged from hidden silos, each one large enough to swallow a building. They had been built from materials mined from the moon itself, assembled by robots and a handful of engineers who had lived in secret for 5 years. The Velcrin fleet was pulling back when the first beam fired. It was pure energy, focused and refined, moving at the speed of light. A Velcrin destroyer simply ceased to exist, every atom torn apart by the impact. More beams fired. The moon lit up like a star as humanity's hidden weapons revealed themselves. Ship after ship died, and the Velcrin realized they weren't retreating. They were flying into a trap. "Jump to hyperspace," Thelvax ordered desperately. "Get us out of this system." His engineer worked frantically at the controls, then looked up with horror on his face. "Commander, the hyperspace engines won't engage. Something is blocking them." At CERN, Dr. Bora watched her greatest creation do its work. The quantum disruptor was a weapon unlike anything humanity had built before. It didn't destroy ships. Instead, it created a field that prevented faster-than-light travel. Any ship caught in the field was trapped, unable to jump to hyperspace or escape. "The cage is closed," she said with grim satisfaction. "They're not going anywhere." Lieutenant Hyunsik chased a Velcrin fighter through the debris field that had once been part of the alien fleet. His ammunition was running low, but his blood was burning hot with victory. They were winning. Against all odds, humanity was actually winning. "Ghost 3, this is Ghost Leader," he called. "Status report." "Ghost 3 is down, Leader," another pilot replied. Saw him take a direct hit. He didn't make it. Hyunsik's celebration died in his throat. People were dying. Good people, friends. The victory was real, but so was the cost. "Copy that," he said quietly. "All remaining Ghost Squadron fighters form up on me. We finish this." The battle raged for 6 more hours. The Velcrin fought with the desperation of trapped animals, but humanity's preparations were too thorough. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy had been designed specifically to counter the Velcrin Empire's military doctrine. When the sun rose over Earth the next morning, a third of the Velcrin fleet was destroyed. Wreckage orbited the planet like a new ring of metal and fire. The surviving ships had retreated to the far side of Mars, damaged and demoralized. Commander Thelvax sat in his command chair, staring at the casualty reports. 12,000 Velcrin were dead, 37 ships destroyed or too damaged to fight. And worst of all, they were trapped. The humans had caged them like animals. His communicator buzzed. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from Earth." Admiral Tae Yang's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired but determined. Behind him, Thelvax could see the command center filled with human military officers. "Commander Thelvax of the Velcrin Empire," Tae Yang said in surprisingly good Velcrin language. "You came to our world expecting an easy conquest. You thought we were primitives. You were wrong." Thelvax said nothing. "We've been listening to your transmissions for 20 years, Tae Yang continued. "We know your tactics. We know your weapons. We built our entire military to defeat you specifically, and now you're trapped in our system with no way to escape. What do you want?" Thelvax finally asked. "I want you to send a message to your empire," Tae Yang replied. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humanity will never surrender. Tell them that any fleet they send to Earth will share your fate. And then I want you to surrender your ships or I will finish what we started." The communication ended. Thelvax looked around his bridge at his exhausted, frightened crew. He thought about the empire he had served for 40 years. He thought about the 47 worlds he had conquered. Then he thought about the human pilots who had fought like demons, the weapons that had appeared from nowhere, the trap that had been waiting for decades. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Thelvax felt something he had never felt before. Fear, not fear of death, but fear of what these humans might become if they ever left their planet and reached the stars. Commander Thelvax refused to surrender. Instead, he sent a message that made Admiral Tae Yang's blood run cold. "People of Earth," the alien commander's voice broadcasted across every communication channel, "you have surprised us with your weapons. But we still have power you cannot imagine. Surrender within 24 hours or I will destroy your largest cities from orbit. Beijing, Tokyo, New York, London. All of them will burn. The choice is yours." In the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Tae Yang slammed his fist on the table. Around him, representatives from every nation on Earth argued in panicked voices. "We have to negotiate," the British ambassador shouted. "We can't let them kill billions of people." "If we surrender now, they'll kill us anyway," Tae Yang replied. "Just slower, as slaves." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Tae Yang pulled up data on the holographic display. "We've intercepted their communications. We know what the Velcrin do to conquered worlds. The lucky ones become slaves. The unlucky ones become food." The room fell silent. "We need a bold move," Tae Yang continued. "Something they won't expect. Dr. Bora, what's the status of Operation Hammer Strike?" Dr. Bora looked up from her computer, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "The plans are ready, but Admiral, it's incredibly dangerous. The chances of success are less than 30%. "What's the plan?" the Chinese ambassador asked. Tai Yang pulled up a schematic of the Velcrin flagship. "We're going to board their command ship and take it over. With their flagship under our control, the rest of their fleet will be thrown into chaos." "That's suicide," someone said. "Maybe," Tae Yang admitted, "but it's better than waiting for them to bomb our cities." In a military base in Japan, Colonel Dong Hyun assembled his team. He was 45 years old and had trained for urban combat, jungle warfare, and desert operations. He had never trained to board an alien spaceship, but he was about to do it anyway. "Listen up," he told his Marines. "We're going into enemy territory with equipment we've barely tested against an enemy we've never fought face to face. Half of us probably won't make it back. Anyone who wants to walk away can do so now. No judgment." Not a single Marine moved. Dong Hyun smiled. "Good. Let's go make history." Lieutenant Hyun-sik, now promoted to captain after his heroics in the first battle, would pilot the stealth dropship. The ship was experimental, using technology reverse-engineered from alien designs. On paper, it could slip past enemy sensors. In practice, they would find out when they tried. Captain Hyun-sik, Colonel Dong-hyun said as they prepared to launch, if things go wrong up there, don't wait for us. Get yourself out. Respectfully, Colonel, shut up, Hyun-sik replied. I'm not leaving anyone behind. Dong-hyun grinned. I like your style, kid. With them was Ji-woo, a 23-year-old engineer who looked too young to be in a military operation. But looks were deceiving. Ji-woo had designed the EMP warheads they would use to disable the Velcrin ship's systems. She had also designed the plasma torches that would cut through the alien hull. Are you scared? Dong-hyun asked her as they loaded into the dropship. Terrified, Ji-woo admitted. But my grandmother always said that brave people aren't the ones who feel no fear. They're the ones who act despite being scared. Smart grandmother. The dropship launched from Earth in the middle of the night, flying without lights and without making a sound. Hyun-sik guided it through the debris field that orbited the planet, using destroyed ships as cover. His hands were steady on the controls, but his heart hammered in his chest. They reached the Velcrin flagship without being detected. The ship was massive, larger than any building Hyun-sik had ever seen. Its hull was scarred from battle, and several sections showed damage from the earlier fighting. There, Ji-woo pointed at a damaged area where the armor had been torn away. We can enter through that breach. Hyun-sik brought the dropship close and matched speed with the alien vessel. The Marines prepared to exit, checking their weapons one last time. They wore spacesuits that could survive combat and carried rifles that fired explosive rounds. Go, 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 Colonel Dong-hyun ordered. The Marines leaped from the dropship and used magnetic boots to walk across the Velcrin hull. Ji-woo activated her plasma torch and began cutting through the exposed inner walls. The metal glowed white-hot and peeled away like paper. They were inside. The interior of the Velcrin ship was dark and filled with smoke from earlier battle damage. Emergency lights cast everything in a red glow. The corridors were too tall and too wide for humans, built for a species that was larger than Earth people. Stay alert, Dong-hyun whispered. We don't know what we're going to find. They found Velcrin survivors quickly. 3 alien soldiers came around a corner, and both sides stared at each other in surprise for a split second. Then the shooting started. The Velcrin fired energy weapons that left burn marks on the walls. The humans fired explosive rounds that tore through alien armor. 2 Velcrin went down immediately. The third tried to run but didn't make it 10 steps. Keep moving, Dong-hyun ordered. We need to reach the engineering section. They fought their way through the ship, room by room and corridor by corridor. The Velcrin were tough fighters, but they weren't prepared for the aggression and tactics of human Marines. More importantly, in the tighter confines of the ship's interior, the humans' smaller size became an advantage. Ji-woo led them to the engineering section, following blueprints that Dr. Bora's team had created from intercepted Velcrin technical manuals. When they reached the main power room, she placed her EMP warheads at strategic points around the reactors. Everyone out, she said. This is going to be loud. They ran back, down the corridor, and Ji-woo detonated the charges remotely. The EMP wave rolled through the ship like invisible thunder. Lights died. Computers sparked and went dark. The Velcrin flagship went dead in space. On the bridge, Commander Thelvax shouted orders as his systems failed around him. What's happening? Get me a damage report. Commander, we have intruders on board, his security officer reported. They've disabled the primary power systems. We're running on emergency batteries only. How many intruders? Unknown, sir, but they're heading toward the bridge. Thelvax drew his sidearm. If he was going to die, he would die fighting. Colonel Dong-hyun and his Marines reached the bridge doors and placed breaching charges. The explosion blew the doors inward, and they stormed through into the command center. Velcrin officers reached for weapons, but they were too slow. Drop your weapons, Dong-hyun shouted in Velcrin language. Drop them now or die. Commander Thelvax found himself staring down the barrel of a human rifle. Around him, his bridge crew slowly raised their hands in surrender. They had conquered 47 worlds, but they had never faced an enemy willing to board their flagship and take it by force. You're insane, Thelvax said to Dong-hyun. All of you. This entire species is insane. Maybe, Dong-hyun replied, but we're also free. which is more than your empire can say. Back on Earth, Admiral Tae Yang received the transmission from Colonel Dong-hyun. Sir, the flagship is secure. We have Commander Thelvax in custody. The command center erupted in cheers. They had done the impossible. They had captured the enemy commander and taken control of his ship. But Tae Yang didn't celebrate. He knew this was just the beginning. The Velcrin Empire was vast, and they had only defeated one fleet. When news of this battle reached the Empire's home worlds, they would send more ships. Bigger ships. Maybe enough to overwhelm even Earth's defenses. Dr. Bora approached him with a data pad. Admiral, we've cracked their communication codes. We can access their entire military network. Show me, Tae Yang said. What he saw on the screen made his heart sink. The Velcrin Empire had already detected that their fleet was in trouble. They were preparing to send reinforcements, not a small force. The entire First Armada, the most powerful military force in the Empire. How many ships? Tae Yang asked quietly. Over 1,000, Bora replied. They'll be here in less than a week. Tae Yang looked around at the celebrating officers and soldiers. They thought they had won. They didn't realize that the real battle was just beginning. 1,000 ships. Even with all their preparations, even with all their weapons, Earth couldn't survive an assault like that. Dr. Bora, he said, I need you to work on something for me. Something big. Something that can stop an entire armada. What did you have in mind? Do you remember the Prometheus protocol? The one you said was too dangerous to ever use? Bora's face went pale. Admiral, that weapon could destroy our entire solar system. I know, Tae Yang said. But if the Velcrin send 1,000 ships, we're destroyed anyway. At least with Prometheus, we have a chance. A small one, but a chance. It would require someone to deliver it manually, Bora said. There's no way to detonate it remotely. Whoever pilots the weapon won't come back. I know that too, Tae Yang replied. Start building it. I'll find someone brave enough to deliver it. He looked up at the image of Earth on the main screen. Beautiful blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. Home. If they failed, it would all be ashes. If they succeeded, it might still be ashes. But it would be free ashes. And that was worth everything. The Velcrin First Armada appeared at the edge of the solar system like a swarm of metal locusts. 1,000 warships, 10,000 fighters, 500,000 soldiers. Grand Admiral Krevath commanded them from his massive dreadnought. A ship so large it could be seen with the naked eye from Earth's surface. Look at their pathetic planet, Krevath said to his officers. They destroyed one fleet and think they're warriors. I will crush them so completely that their children's children will remember why they should have surrendered. On Earth, people watched the sky with fear and desperation. The first victory had given them hope. But this armada was 5 times larger than anything they had faced before. In cities around the world, families held each other tight. Some prayed. Some wrote final letters to loved ones. Some simply stared at the stars and waited for the end. In the command center, Admiral Tae Yang looked at the tactical display with tired eyes. He hadn't slept in 3 days. Around him, his officers worked frantically to coordinate Earth's defense, but everyone knew the truth. They couldn't win this battle. Not with conventional weapons. Dr. Bora, he said into his communicator. Is it ready? In a secret facility beneath the Nevada desert, Dr. Bora stood before her creation. The Prometheus weapon looked deceptively simple. A modified fusion reactor combined with the captured Velcrin flagship's power core. But the calculations behind it were nightmarish. When detonated, it would create a chain reaction that would briefly turn space itself into a star. It's ready, she said quietly. Admiral, are you sure about this? The blast will destroy everything within 5 million kilometers. That includes the weapon delivery ship and everyone on it. I know, Tae Yang replied. Has Captain Hyun-sik been informed? Yes, sir. He volunteered immediately. Tae Yang closed his eyes. Hyun-sik was 28 years old. Barely more than a kid. He should have a long life ahead of him. Maybe a family, maybe growing old watching his grandchildren play. Instead, he was going to fly into the heart of an enemy fleet and turn himself into a star. Tell him. Tae Yang paused. Tell him humanity won't forget. Captain Hyun-sik stood in the hangar bay, looking at the captured Velcrin flagship they had renamed Defiance. Engineer Jiwoo was making final adjustments to the Prometheus weapon in its cargo bay. Around them, a dozen other volunteers prepared for the mission. They all knew it was one way. "You don't have to do this," Captain Nari said to Hyunsik. She had volunteered to pilot the ship on its final journey. "You've already done more than enough." "Neither do you," Hyunsik replied. "But someone has to. Might as well be us." Jiwoo finished her work and climbed down from the weapon. She was crying, but her hands were steady. "It's armed. Once we're in position, I just need to press this button." She showed them a small remote device. "After that, we have 30 seconds before detonation." 30 seconds, Hyunsik repeated. "Not a lot of time to think about life choices." "Better not to think at all," Nari said. "Just do the job and get it done." The Marines who had captured the flagship volunteered to come too. Colonel Dong Hyun said they would need security in case there were any Velcrin survivors still hiding on the ship. Everyone knew it was an excuse. He just didn't want the pilots to die alone. "This is a terrible plan," one of the Marines said. "All the best plans are terrible," Dong Hyun replied. "That's how you know they'll work." The Defiance launched from its hidden dock on the dark side of the moon. Captain Nari piloted it carefully, broadcasting Velcrin surrender codes they had extracted from Commander Thelvax. To the First Armada, it would look like one of their own ships coming to surrender formally. Grand Admiral Krevath watched the approaching vessel with satisfaction. "See?" he said to his officers. "They know when they're beaten. Prepare to receive their surrender delegation." "Sir, should we scan the ship first?" his security officer asked. "Why?" Krevath laughed. "What could they possibly do? They're defeated, broken. Let them come and bow before the Empire." On Earth, Admiral Tae-yang watched every second of the Defiance's approach. He had ordered every remaining weapon, every ship, every fighter to stage diversionary attacks across the solar system. The Velcrin needed to be distracted, needed to focus on multiple threats so they wouldn't look too closely at the surrendering flagship. "Admiral," one of his officers said, "the outer defense platforms are taking heavy fire. They won't last long." "They don't need to last long," Tae-yang replied. "Just long enough." Aboard the Defiance, the crew felt every second stretch like hours. They flew past dozens of Velcrin warships, any one of which could have destroyed them with a single shot. But the surrender codes held. The enemy fleet let them pass. "How close do we need to be?" Captain Nari asked Jiwoo. "As close as possible," the engineer replied. "The closer we are to their command ship, the more of the fleet will be caught in the blast." Hyunsik checked his fighter pilot's chronometer. It had been a gift from his father, who had died when Hyunsik was just 15. He wondered if there was an afterlife, if his father would be waiting for him on the other side. "Approaching the Grand Admiral's dreadnought," Nari reported. "They're opening their hangar bay. They expect us to dock." "Perfect," Colonel Dong Hyun said. "Get us as close as you can." The Defiance moved into the heart of the Velcrin Armada. Hundreds of warships surrounded them on all sides. Thousands of guns pointed at Earth, the pride and power of an empire that had conquered dozens of worlds, all gathered in one place. Grand Admiral Krevath stood from his command throne, preparing to receive the human surrender in person. He wanted to see the look in their eyes when they realized how completely they had lost. Aboard the Defiance, Jiwoo's hand hovered over the detonation button. "We're in position," she said softly. Captain Nari looked at her crew. Hyunsik, Jiwoo, Colonel Dong Hyun and his Marines, all of them so young, all of them about to die. "It's been an honor serving with you all." "The honor was ours, Captain," Dong Hyun replied. Hyunsik activated the communication system one last time. "Earth, this is Captain Hyunsik, pilot designation Ghost Leader. We are in position and preparing to execute Prometheus Protocol." He paused. "Tell my mother I love her. Tell Admiral Tae-yang we did our job. And tell humanity." He smiled. "Tell humanity to look up. We're about to light up the sky." On the Grand Admiral's ship, a junior officer suddenly shouted, "Sir, energy readings from that ship are spiking." "They're not here to surrender." Krevath turned toward his screens, and for the first time in his long military career, he felt ice-cold fear. "Fire on that ship." "Kill it now, too late." Jiwoo pressed the button. "For Earth," she whispered. The Prometheus weapon detonated. For one brief, impossible moment, a star was born in the cold vacuum of space. Fusion reactions cascaded beyond control, feeding on themselves and the surrounding energy. The blast expanded at nearly the speed of light, a sphere of pure annihilation that consumed everything in its path. The Grand Admiral's dreadnought simply ceased to exist. The ships around it lasted perhaps a fraction of a second longer. The outer edges of the fleet had enough time for their crews to scream before they too were turned to ash and scattered atoms. On Earth, every telescope, every camera, every eye turned toward the sky. The detonation was visible even in daylight, a second sun that blazed for 3 seconds and then faded. When it dimmed, the Velcrin First Armada was gone. 1,000 ships, 500,000 lives, the most powerful military force the Empire possessed, all erased. The shockwave reached Earth hours later, creating auroras that danced across the sky in colors no one had ever seen before, purple and green and gold, twisting and flowing like rivers of light. It was beautiful and terrible, a light show born from the ashes of victory and sacrifice. In the command center, Admiral Taeyang stood alone, watching the auroras through the observation window. Around him, people were celebrating, crying, cheering. They had won. Against impossible odds, humanity had survived. But Taeyang couldn't celebrate. He kept seeing Hyunsik's young face, Jiwoo's nervous smile, Nari's steady confidence, Dong Hyun's grim determination. All of them were gone now, turned to light and heat and energy. Dr. Bora approached quietly. "Admiral, the quantum disruption field is failing. Any surviving Velcrin ships will be able to escape soon. Let them go," Taeyang said. "Let them run back to their empire. Let them tell everyone what happened here. Let them tell the galaxy what happens when you threaten Earth." "Do you think more will come?" "Maybe," Taeyang admitted. "But not soon, and not easily. We've bought ourselves time. Time to prepare. Time to build. Time to become something even stronger." He touched the window, feeling the cool glass against his palm. Somewhere up there, in the space between the stars, Captain Hyunsik and his crew had become light itself. They had saved humanity by becoming ash, scattered across the void. "They'll be remembered," Taeyang said quietly. "All of them. We'll build monuments. We'll tell their stories. We'll make sure that every human being who ever lives knows what they did for us today." "I hope that's enough," Bora said. "It has to be," Taeyang replied. "It's all we can give them now." 6 months after the Battle of Seoul, Earth was a changed world. In every city, monuments rose to honor the fallen heroes. The largest stood in Seoul, a tower of black stone that reached toward the sky. At its base were carved the names of everyone who had died defending humanity. Captain Hyunsik's name was at the top, right next to Engineer Jiwoo, Captain Nari, and Colonel Dong Hyun. Every day, thousands of people came to leave flowers and touch the stone. Parents brought their children and told them stories of the brave pilots who had turned themselves into a star to save the world. Old men and women wept for the young lives lost. Students wrote poems and left them at the memorial. Admiral Taeyang visited the monument when he could find time. He was busier now than ever before. The United Nations had promoted him to Supreme Commander of Earth's military forces, and every day brought new challenges and new responsibilities. They would have hated all this attention, Dr. Bora said, standing beside him at the memorial. Captain Hyunsik especially. He was always uncomfortable with praise. "Maybe," Taeyang replied, "but they deserve it. Without them, we wouldn't be here." Bora nodded toward a group of school children who were drawing pictures at the memorial. "The next generation will grow up knowing their names. That's immortality in its own way." Across the galaxy, the Velcrin Empire was collapsing. The loss of 2 entire fleets and the Grand Admiral had shattered the Empire's image of invincibility. Conquered worlds saw their chance and rebelled. The Empire's military, once feared across dozens of systems, was now stretched thin trying to hold everything together. Commander Thelvax, still held as a prisoner on Earth, watched broadcasts of his Empire's destruction from his cell. Part of him felt anger and shame. Another part felt something he had never expected: relief. The empire he had served was built on cruelty and conquest. Maybe it deserved to fall. "You have a visitor," a guard told him one day. Admiral Taeyang entered the cell. The 2 military commanders had spoken several times since the battle. They had developed a strange kind of respect for each other, the way soldiers sometimes do after fighting. "Your empire is dying," Taeyang said, sitting across from Thelvax. "What do you think will happen?" Civil war, Thelvax replied. Different factions fighting for control. It could last for years, maybe decades, and the conquered species? They'll be free, I suppose. For better or worse. Thelvax looked at the human admiral. You destroyed my entire civilization. Do you feel proud? No, Taeyang said honestly. I feel tired and sad, and grateful we survived, he paused. We didn't want this war, Commander. You brought it to us. We just finished it. I know, Thelvax admitted. I've had a lot of time to think. The intelligence reports were wrong about your species. Not just about your weapons, but about your nature. You're not primitives. You're survivors. Maybe the most dangerous survivors in the galaxy. While the Velcrin Empire crumbled, Earth scientists made a breakthrough. Dr. Bora's team, working with captured Velcrin technology, finally cracked the secret of faster-than-light travel. The quantum drives that had powered the alien ships could be reproduced and improved. We can leave our solar system now, Bora announced to the United Nations Assembly. We can travel to other stars. We can explore the galaxy. The news was met with mixed reactions. Some people were excited about the possibilities of exploration and new worlds. Others were afraid. They had barely survived an alien invasion. Did they really want to go out into space where more enemies might be waiting? We have to, Taeyang argued during the debates. If we stay isolated, we're vulnerable. But if we go out there, make allies, learn about the galaxy, we can be prepared for whatever comes next. The decision was made. Earth would build a fleet of exploration and military vessels. They would reach out to other species cautiously but confidently, and they would never again be caught unprepared. The first person chosen to make contact with alien species was Ambassador Yuna. She was a career diplomat who spoke 7 Earth languages and had spent the past months learning everything she could about Galactic, politics from Commander Thelvax and other captured Velcrin. Officers, what should I tell them? Yuna asked Admiral Taeyang before her first mission. What message should I carry from Earth? Tell them the truth, Taeyang replied. We're a young species. We've made mistakes. We're still learning, but we're also strong, and we value our freedom more than anything. We want to be friends, but we won't be victims. That's a complicated message, Yuna said. We're a complicated species. Taeyang smiled. The first aliens to make friendly contact with Earth were representatives of the Free Species Coalition, a group of worlds that had been fighting against the Velcrin Empire for decades. They arrived in a small diplomatic ship, broadcasting peaceful intentions and requesting a meeting. Their leader was a being named Veltoth, from a species that looked like walking crystals. He spoke through a translation device that turned his harmonic vibrations into words humans could understand. We have watched your battle with great interest, Veltoth said to Ambassador Yuna and the assembled Earth leaders. The Velcrin Empire has terrorized this region of space for 2 centuries. You did in months what we could not do in decades. You destroyed them. We defended ourselves, Yuna replied carefully. We didn't seek war, but we won't accept slavery either. A noble position, Veltoth said. Many species in the coalition would like to form alliances with Earth. Trade agreements. Mutual defense pacts. We could teach you about the galaxy. You could share your remarkable weapons technology. The discussions lasted for weeks. Earth learned that the galaxy was far more complex than they had imagined. Thousands of species, dozens of political factions, ancient civilizations that had been traveling the stars for millennia, and everywhere fear of the Velcrin Empire, which had dominated through superior military power until Earth had proven that the Velcrin could be beaten. They're afraid of us, Dr. Bora said to Taeyang after reviewing intelligence reports. Half the galaxy thinks we're going to be the next conquerors. Are we? Taeyang asked. I don't know, Bora admitted. We have the weapons. We have the will. What's to stop us from becoming what we destroyed? It was a question that haunted many of Earth's leaders. They had built terrible weapons to defend their freedom, but weapons don't know the difference between defense and conquest. The same technology that had saved Earth could be used to conquer other worlds. The answer came from an unexpected source. Commander Thelvax, still technically a prisoner, requested a meeting with the United Nations Security Council. I've served the Velcrin Empire for 40 years, he told the assembled leaders. I've seen what conquest does to a civilization. Not just to the victims, but to the conquerors. The Empire started as a defensive alliance. Then they won a few wars. Then they realized they had power, and power is addictive. Why are you telling us this? Someone asked. Because I see the same pattern starting here, Thelvax replied. You have power now. Great power, and there will be voices telling you to use it. To make the galaxy safe by making it obey you. Don't listen to those voices. The moment you start conquering for safety or security is the moment you become what you fought against. The council listened. They debated, and finally they made a declaration that would define Earth's place in the galaxy. The Earth Compact was simple. Humanity would never start wars of conquest. They would defend themselves and their allies with absolute force if necessary. They would share technology with peaceful species. They would welcome refugees and protect the weak. But they would never rule others. We were slaves once, Ambassador Yuna said when presenting the compact to the Free Species Coalition. Not to the Velcrin, but to our own worst impulses. We enslaved each other. We conquered each other. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we learned to be better. We won't repeat those mistakes. The galaxy watched with cautious hope. Some species joined Earth's alliance. Others kept their distance. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity had announced itself to the universe in the most dramatic way possible, and the galaxy would never be the same. 5 years after the Battle of Sol, Admiral Tae Yang retired from active military service. He was 61 years old and had spent his entire adult life preparing for and fighting wars. He was tired, but he was also proud. Earth now had colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. Human ships patrolled their corner of the galaxy, ensuring no empire would dare threaten them. The first joint human-alien research station was under construction at Proxima Centauri. Children studied xenobiology in schools and dreamed of visiting distant worlds. On his last day as Supreme Commander, Tae Yang visited the Sol Memorial one final time. The black stone tower gleamed in the afternoon sun. Fresh flowers lay at its base, as they always did. He placed his hand on Captain Hyun-sik's name, carved in the stone. We did it, he said quietly. We survived. We're building something good. I hope you can see it wherever you are. A young girl approached him, maybe 8 years old. She looked up at the old admiral with wide eyes. Are you Admiral Tae Yang? She asked. The one who won the war? I helped, Tae Yang replied. But the real heroes are the ones whose names are on this stone. My teacher says you saved the world. We all saved the world, Tae Yang corrected gently. Every person who fought. Every person who built weapons. Every person who refused to surrender. We did it together. The girl thought about this. When I grow up, I want to fly spaceships. Like Captain Hyun-sik, Tae Yang smiled. Then study hard, be brave, and remember what he fought for. Freedom, the girl said confidently. That's right, freedom. As Tae Yang walked away from the memorial, he looked up at the sky. It was a clear day, and even though it was afternoon, he could see stars beginning to appear. Human ships moved among those stars now. Human voices spoke in languages that had evolved on worlds light years away. Human children would grow up knowing the galaxy was their home. The Velcrin Empire had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest. They had found ash and fire instead. They had learned too late that humanity would burn everything to ash before accepting chains. That lesson had been written across the stars in fire and blood. But from those ashes, something new had grown. Something hopeful. Something that promised a future where humans and aliens could work together, explore together, and build together. The galaxy had dared to invade Earth. Humanity had turned their fleet to ash. And from that ash, a new dawn had risen, brighter than any star. Somewhere in the cold vacuum of space, particles of scattered atoms drifted through the void. They had once been ships. They had once been warriors. They had once been the pride of an empire. Now they were dust, scattered among the stars, a warning to anyone who might threaten Earth again. And somewhere else in the space between quantum states and the fabric of reality itself, the souls of brave pilots and engineers and marines looked down at their world and smiled. They had given everything, and it had been enough. Earth was free. Humanity stood tall among the stars. And the galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Never threaten a species that has nothing left to lose. Because they will fight with everything they have, and they will turn your empire to ash before they accept defeat. The end of one story. The beginning of another. The stars waited, full of promise and danger and infinite possibilities. And humanity, young and brave and fierce, rose to meet them.